Vicky Vale.
Bruce Wayne.
And what do you do for a living?
Lieutenant, is there a 6-foot bat in Gotham City?
Nice outfit.
You look fine.
I didn't ask. I have given a name to my pain.
What are you?
I'm Batman. Where did you get those wonderful toys? My life is really complex. Winged freak terrorizes. Wait till they get a load of me.
All right. Welcome. We've got to get rid of this to the JD Oliva Project. I'm JD Oliva, as of course part of the Mike and JD show. As always, I'm trying to adjust this thing right now. It's being the pain in the butt. All right. So before I bring in the guest for today, I got a guest on this one. This is the first time I've ever done the JD Oliva Project with a partner. Mike's not here today. This is going to be something a little different. I'm going to talk about June 23rd, 1989. That's like a very important day in my life. And I'll tell you why. Because like, there's very rare times you can like point to a moment in childhood that like changes who you are as a person. Right. And I remember that day because my parents had rented a video called Everybody's All American with Dennis Quaid. And I don't remember a damn thing about that movie. But what I do remember was the trailers, right? You press play, you get the trailers. And the trailer for Batman was on there. And that was like, I wasn't a comic book guy as a kid, like not till this point. And after seeing that trailer, that is the original trailer, the first trailer for Batman 89, the one that we'll talk more about that later, but that's the OG trailer. And I saw that at that moment on, I was hooked. I had to see this movie. It was like everything I was going to do revolved around seeing this movie. And I remember I bought a comic at the local drugstore. It was Batman Annual 13. And I don't remember what the stories were, but I remember it had these who's who of DC, which is like these data entries. They would tell you all the information you needed to know about these characters. So I bought that about a month before the movie came out. And then by the time June 23rd rolled around, I raced my bike home from baseball practice. I had my dad take my brother and I to the mall where the theater was. And that was it, man. Like, that was it. I remember seeing there, and I remember sitting in that theater, and my heart was just pumping. It was pumping. And then the theater goes black, and you see that darkened Warner Brothers logo, and Danny Elfman's overture kicks in. And I'll be honest with you, man, my life was never the same again. Everything I've done in my life, from comics to film to writing, is because of this movie. Like, it changed me fundamentally as a human being. And I cannot wait to talk about this movie. And to do that, I'm bringing in a buddy of mine who, this is what we do. We hang out and we talk about movies together all the time. He's never been on one of my pods before. So this is a first, and I'm super excited. I'm super stoked to bring in my best friend. This is Joe Ziegler. Joe, thanks for coming, man. Welcome to podcasting, my friend.
Hey, man. Thanks. Good to be here with you, brother. And do what we do, you know.
This is literally, so like, I don't have a plan for anything. I never have a plan with these JD Oliva projects. I just talk. And this is kind of what we've been doing for, I'm not even over exaggerating, like over 30 years. We just know this is what we do. Like, we'll go to the movies and just talk about movies all the time. So like the fact that it took me years to figure out that we should just do this is kind of mind-boggling. But you and I have had a lot of talks about this movie in particular over the years, because at some point I got too cool for school and started saying, well, it's good, but it's flawed, and it's got this and it's not that. And you know, I kind of lost my way, and I turned this on last night.
Well, let me stop you there,
I've been talking a lot. You go ahead and talk.
Yeah, no. I saw your post I think on Facebook or something, and initially I first saw it, and you're like, "Oh, the flaws, the flaws," and I'm like, "Man, I gotta say something to him because," and I think you beat me to the punch. You sent me a text or something, and I'm like, I just I disagree, man. And I know you rewatched it, and I did the same. It's a fantastic movie. You know what I mean? And I think it starts with something, I think your brother probably is more into than I am, but the score of
Oh
this
yeah.
movie, I just love Danny Elfman. Like, I know you just brought him up. Unbelievable, man. I mean, I think he sets the mood so well with Tim Burton's backdrop. I think that the score really sets this movie apart. You know what I mean?
Oh, I agree 100%. I think that Danny Elfman is I think he does a lot of the heavy lifting in this movie. Like as
Yeah, I
far as
agree.
setting the tone, cuz it's a great movie. Like I think that everything that I've said about it over recent years is wrong. I went and watched this with a fresh set of eyes just last night cuz I wanted to watch it again. I wanted to watch my camera's giving me a ton of trouble. I'm sorry about that. I'm just keep slipping. I'm trying to lock this sucker. Like I watched this movie with a fresh set of eyes last night, and for the first time in probably, I don't know, 15 years or so, I felt like I was 9 years old again watching it. Like, I felt the way
Yeah,
I felt when I was a kid, and I don't know if that's because 'cause I've been having a year, I've been doing a lot I've been in my
yeah,
head a lot,
yeah.
thinking a lot of childhood and all that kinda stuff, but, like, for the first time in a long time, I saw this movie and I felt like, "Oh my god, this is everything I remembered it being." But it's a weird movie, like, it's very much a Tim Burton movie, you
Oh,
know?
for sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
There's
no,
good.
I mean, no, I was just gonna say. I mean, I think, I think what you were going at with the score of this movie and Elfman. I mean, it's such a the moods in this movie and the backdrop. I think and the sound and just everything he brings to it. I think just is a huge part of it. You know what I mean? I mean, and then
Oh,
I
for
think
sure.
I'm pretty sure did he do Batman Returns? I think he
Yeah.
did Beetlejuice,
Yeah,
a couple other,
everything
yeah,
everything Tim Burton. Anything Tim
yeah,
Burton has done, pretty much. I don't maybe not everything, but I know the vast majority of Tim Burton's work, Danny Elfman has been the composer on it. And there's like a lot of times where like it's weird because this trailer, the one that I showed at the beginning of the episode, like it's not a real trailer. Like you watch when I say a real trailer, like you watch a trailer, most of them are more slickly produced. The song kind of carries over it. Like there's a
yeah.
little
It
bit,
didn't have that.
there's some narrative. No, because they threw it together because people were so up their butt about Keaton. Like people were so
Ah,
concerned
gotcha.
about Michael Keaton that the studio rushed to get something out to people so they would calm the fuck down, right? And
What
so,
do you mean? What were they up with Keaton?
oh, you
People
don't
were.
know this?
I don't
You don't
remember
know this?
that. No, so
Okay, so
I
here's
don't
the
remember
story.
that. Talk to me about it.
Okay, I'm gonna flash back to 2007. Do you remember how you were when they casted Heath Ledger as the
Oh, I
Joker?
hated it before.
Yep.
Yeah, I was like, this is not going to go well. 10 things I hate about you.
Mhm.
10 things I hate about Heath Ledger, and I was
I
completely off.
I believe that's the
You
text you
know,
sent me with 10 things I hate about Heath
yeah,
Ledger. I believe those were your exact words. People, so like how you were with that in 2007, that's how like fandom was in 1988 when they announced Michael Keaton was going to be Batman, because
yeah,
all people knew from Michael Keaton was comedy, right?
yeah,
Like they said like, oh, Mr. Mom, like
yeah,
that was Michael Keaton's big movie at the time was Mr. Mom. And like they didn't think people thought it was going to be a comedy. And what was really upsetting is like because Batman had the fans had been trying to like really escape from the idea of the Adam West show, right?
yeah,
Because in the 80s, comic books start taking themselves like way too seriously. Like you get like specifically with Batman, you get Dark Knight Returns, you get Arkham Asylum, Batman Year One, like all these super gritty comics that we've never been able to shake in the next 40 years. Like nothing is fun in comics anymore. Everything is so harsh and serious. Like so they wanted that tone. So very as quick as possible. And they casted they hired the director from Pee-wee's Big Adventure and Mr. Mom, and they just made Beetlejuice together. So fandom was like, "Oh my god, this is going to be a joke." And they weren't thrilled about it. So they like the studio had to put out something to like kind of like assuage the fans' fears. So they threw that, and it's literally it feels like a very thrown together trailer, but at the same
yeah. It
time,
does.
it sets the tone for what this movie is going to be. And some of the most famous lines from the movie are in that trailer, like, wing freak terrorizes, wait till they get a load of me.
Yeah.
Lieutenant, is there a 6-foot bat in Gotham City? Like, and it does such a great job of setting the tone. But like, you see a lot of those clips that don't have the Danny Elfman score underneath it, and it's missing something.
Yeah, when I watched that, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, I wonder if this is like you know what I mean? I figured you had a reason why you were putting it out there, but yeah, it almost didn't feel right. You know what I mean?
No, I know
Just
exactly what you
watching
mean.
it without the score, because I mean that I think that I watched it again yesterday and then today on the plane and finished it up here at the hotel. And I was like, man, this score, I hope we get into talking about it, because I think it really is a huge part, especially of this movie. You know what I mean? And an important part for this movie.
It's a massive part of this movie, and I think it's one reason why Christopher Nolan stayed with like the Hans Zimmer, like very minimalist, very not over the top score, because like they couldn't
very
do
different.
very different. They couldn't do what Danny Elfman did, so they tried to do something different instead, right? And I think they accomplished that. Sorry, man, my camera's giving me such a problem tonight. Like, they couldn't do what Danny Elfman did, so they tried to do something completely different, and it worked for what they were doing. But it's a totally different vibe for that movie than it is for this one. Like, I think that now I want to compare it to the Nolan movies, because I think that happened so much when the Dark Knight movies come out. Nolan, he kind of redefines what a superhero movie is, right?
Well, could you rewind a bit?
Whatever you want, man. Rewind.
Sure. No. Because you were talking about Keaton and you were talking about
Sorry.
But I was watching something too, an interview with Nicholson on this movie or so, or maybe something where they were talking to him, and he was like, I didn't want this to be your kid's, Joker. So he wanted the character a little bit darker, and I don't think he went, Heath Ledger dark. Obviously, it's a completely different character, but I think he took it to the Joker character. I think he took a bit to a different level. You know what I mean?
I know exactly. I agree. And again, that was one of the things that surprised me more about this particular viewing of the episode, or the show, excuse me, was how well I thought Nicholson's performance comes off. Because again, like Heath Ledger, he won the Oscar and he passed, right? And it's his last role. So it's kind of reached iconic status. But because I think people have kind of like really knocked Jack's performance in this movie, right? It's almost like we have to knock someone else down to build someone else up. We do that a lot as a society. So I think that Jack Nicholson's performance in this movie really has kind of gotten undeserved, not hate, but like undeserved, like scorn. Like, it wasn't
as good.
Yeah. People say that, but I mean, like when you go back and watch it, it's pretty good. And it is super dark. Like, he's talking to a corpse at one point. Like, he really channels his Jack Torrance character from The Shining.
Oh, for sure, man. I thought the same thing.
Yeah, he just kind of turns it up a little bit. Like, there's not a lot of difference between those two characters. And I'm looking back at this and I'm like, you know what? This version of the Joker is a lot closer to what the comic book version of the Joker was, especially in the 1970s and 80s. Like, it's a little more gangland than the comic Jokers. The comics Joker is a little bit more there's a great line in the Alan Moore comic Killing Joke, like, if I have to have an origin, I prefer multiple choice. Right? Like, so he doesn't even know what his origin is anymore. But like, so like the origin itself is a little bit, it kind of is what it is. It's good for this movie, it works and it fits this story.
Yeah.
But I think when Nicholson actually and it's like, it's right out of the comics. Like, it's right out of the Red Hood story where Batman drops Joker and drops the Red Hood in the comics into the acid and he becomes the Joker. That is the comic origin of how this guy becomes the clown. So, I mean, they nailed that thing. And for a movie that people are like, it's not comic accurate. It's not comic accurate. There's a lot of tone and like, just tone and like the vibe of everything. It hits that comic book aspect better than I remember. And I think a lot of that is Jack very much embodies the Joker, right? And it's different.
Yeah.
Like you can't say, well, Heath Ledger was this, Heath Ledger was that. I mean, Heath Ledger literally did his own thing, and there's a very different interpretation of the Joker than we ever saw before that. So Heath really was interested in doing his own thing. What Nicholson really does is he brings the comic book Joker to life, and I think he doesn't get enough credit for that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that, and I think even before, I guess you could say, he gets dropped into the vat. I want to talk a little bit about Jack Palance, and I know it's not a huge part in that movie in the beginning. I guess it is, and I just think Palance in that role, and I'm the characters.
Carl Grissom.
Carl Grissom, yeah, drawn a blank, but thanks for bringing it back. I think that character too. I just don't think it gets talked about a lot, and I almost even forgot about it too after I rewatched it. That Palance, I think, does a good job of kind of setting that up and being, kind of the adversary to what's his name, Nicholson's Joker.
Yeah. Yeah, like he really drives the early part of that story, because the Joker's origin, this is very much a revenge story. Like he sets up the Joker to die. Like he's working, like Grissom works his police contacts to get Napier either arrested or murdered to take as revenge for fucking his girlfriend. Right? It's so like primal and like gritty that it doesn't get remembered. And like,
yeah,
he really does an awesome job as a man who's just completely lost touch with reality.
Well, I think you look at Napier and then you look at the Joker. Napier, you see him, when he murders, Bruce Wayne and Bruce Wayne's mom and dad, completely different man from when he goes and murders Grissom. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you look at, he's but the same, there's similarities and differences. He's still using the same line, know?
It almost feels like, and this is like because you say, when you look at him as a kid killing Bruce's parents and the smile and the attitude, you see much more of the Joker than you see of Jack Napier. Like it's almost like when he grew up, he had to keep himself in check a little bit as this mob boss, but inside of him, the Joker was always there. It just had to be let out. Yeah. And it's almost like when he sees himself in the mirror, it's like he sees his true self, which is why he can't stop laughing. Right.
Oh yeah.
Like he can finally be, he's like, I can finally be me. And like, he's a fucking madman at that point. And I think actually one of cinema's
that scene,
villains.
And that scene that you're talking about where he's in there and he's got ripping the stuff off his face and he calls for the mirror and then just starts laughing, and the guy who did the work is like, hey, listen, look what I'm working with. And I think that guy, hey, he made him what he is, and then Batman dropping him in. I mean, it was cool. It's just a really cool.
No, it's
cool
super
cool part.
You know what's kind of cool is actually the props that they use in that scene are the same props that Steve Martin's character uses in Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, the dentist tools from Little Shop of Horrors. It's the exact same props. So I always thought that was kind of cool.
That is cool.
Nicholson, like I said, he's one step from Jack Torrance in this movie. Like he's one step from he is a complete and total raving maniac the whole time.
Yeah.
But like the one thing that really impressed me in this movie is the writing. I think the writing is seriously underrated. There's some really good lines that all the characters in this movie have that like they advance plot, it moves the story, and also like there's some really good character moments from this. And I've never really listened to this movie just for like the writing before, but I was really struck by how good the writing is in this. And I don't know if that's a controversial take or not, but I was really surprised at how well the script has aged. Because I know people don't really say, oh man, Batman, what a great script. Like you talk about like Back to the Future and stuff like that, like as far as like some of the greatest scripts in movie history, you never hear Batman. But like I was struck by how well written it was.
Well, even some of the back characters like Elliot Cox, man. I mean, how he kind of drives the film. You know what I mean? A
Yeah.
small character like that is and some of the lines he has, and I can't think of them right off the bat, but within the movie, just kind of drive it through, and you don't realize, and you're like, oh man, I just rewatching it as an older, you know what I mean, older person, a little bit more mature. You
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah.
when I knew we were going to do this, I'm like watching it for things that I wouldn't have picked up on when I was younger, or just watching the movie to have fun, which I usually do when I'm watching movie. But Elliot Cox, I think I thought he had, with his work with Vicky Vale, with his work with Bruce Wayne, you know what I mean? I just thought he had some good script in the movie where he drove a lot of part of it.
No, I agree. I never really thought about him. He's very effective. He's a very effective side character. I want to talk about Vicky Vale for a second. Kim Basinger joins the cast about 3 or 4 weeks into filming. Like, she
Wow.
was not the. Did you know that? Did you know she was not
No,
the?
I didn't know. I
Yeah.
didn't
So
know.
Sean Young from Blade Runner was the original Vicky Vale. She was, but it wasn't working. Right.
Yeah.
I think it's Vice. Vice has a really good documentary series about Batman movies it's on YouTube right now. I highly recommend it. And she talks about how she's shooting this scene. She was shooting a horseback riding scene with Michael Keaton, and she didn't really know how to ride a horse, but she said, "Yeah, I can ride a horse," just so for the movie, so she could get her, get the part. And she fell off the horse and broke her collarbone. And they took that as an opportunity to recast the role.
Wow.
And they fought about it, and Keaton wanted Michelle Pfeiffer, but she couldn't do it, which is ironic because she went on to play Catwoman. But so they wound up
Hmm.
casting Kim Basinger, and I think she is absolutely fantastic. I think this might be the best role she's ever had in a movie, quite frankly. Like, I think she's
Yeah.
awesome in this movie. Her performance is super underrated because I don't feel like she's like a damsel in distress or anything like that. Like, she has some of those moments because it was the 80s and they were just going to do things like that back then in movies. But
Yeah.
I think she's really good, and really, I think it's an underrated performance. I really do.
Oh no, I agree. I think she's there's a couple of scenes too. I mean, when Jax comes into her apartment, and one of my favorite scenes in that movie, I thought she was really good, and just I think her reactions to what was his old the old girl that made
Alicia.
here, Alicia, yeah, where he puts the mask up and he's like took a dive out a window, and then you've got Keaton coming in, and I think that's probably one of my favorite scenes in the movie when Keaton's like, he's talking to her and he's by the fireplace and he grabs and he kind of gives her the eye. She knows to walk back, and he's
Yeah.
like telling him the story of, hey, I know who you are. There's this kid started making mistakes, Jack, he's like, I like him already, or he's
Great
like,
scene.
I like him already. It hurts people. And then I thought her in that scene was just fantastic. And then it goes to it. And then obviously he goes with you want to get nuts, and he gets shot. And of course what I noticed a bit, and I'm kind of going a little bit on a tangent, but I wanted to get to it, make sure I don't forget, is that the comparing this with the Dark Knight, what I see in this one is there's a lot of like one-upmanship. You've got the Joker,
Yeah.
and he's got the chemicals. Batman figures it out, but it always seems like Batman's got, he's got you got the Joker, the chemicals, he figures it out. There's always a upmanship between those two.
Between the two of
Where
them. Yeah.
where in the Dark Knight, it always seemed like Heath Ledger's Joker was always ahead of Batman. You know what I mean? Eventually he kind of figures it out, but not really though. I mean, at the end, I think where in this movie, I think there's a lot of back and forth between Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson, where it's cool because they kind of go at, one gets up, then the other gets up. Even the balloon scene where he's like throwing the money, top of the world, and then he comes with the Batwing and he's like, where did he get one of those? And ends up shooting his number one guy, in that. But you don't see that much with the Dark Knight. I think with the Dark Knight, it's Heath Ledger was always ahead of the game.
Yeah, you're
You know
right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Even throughout, that's why it's so much, I think, an even darker movie than this, because even at the end, I mean, where he's got to, you either live long enough to be I forget what the line
You either
is, the
live
hero, or
live long enough to you either die a hero or live long enough to become the
long
villain,
enough
or
to
see
be
yourself
the
from the
villain.
villain. Something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, where he forces him into that. I don't think that happened. You know what I mean? Obviously, with the Nicholson one, he fell off the building, he ended up dying or so. But it was, I think, the one where it was like Batman got up, then Joker was up, then Batman, then Joker. But I didn't feel that, though, in Dark Knight. I always felt like
No.
that Heath Ledger was always ahead of the game. Even when he got locked up and they tried to set him up, he was always ahead of, you know what I mean, of Batman.
So like I'll compare Dark Knight. Remember Die Hard 3? That's a movie you and I saw at the
Yeah, oh,
theater
yeah.
when it came out. Die Hard
Yep.
3, if you know, it's my favorite Die Hard movie. Super controversial take. But I really like Die Hard 3 because Jeremy Irons' character is playing Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson the whole movie. Like he's playing
whole time.
He's playing chess with them, and they have to they're jumping through the hoops for him. Dark Knight is very much like that, where the Joker has all these plans, and eventually they backfire on him, and that's kind of what hurts him. Whereas this movie is much more of a cat and mouse game.
Yeah, I agree.
I love how you point out they're constantly trying to one up each other, because there's this duality in it with, like, you say, like, at the end of the movie, he goes, you made me first, there's this whole, and that's why I think, like, it's super controversial take among comic fans. Most comic fans hate the fact that Jack Napier killed his parents, because in the comics and the other movies, so is Joe Chill. I think that works for this movie specifically.
Oh, for sure.
Because it is that tit for tat the whole time. And it's almost like they're two halves of the same coin, right?
Yeah.
Like Bruce Wayne is the Batman, but he is like, like when he becomes Batman, the best parts of him are what comes through. Yeah. When Jack Napier, but he always had Batman inside of him.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But Jack Napier, when he becomes the Joker, it's the worst parts of him that are unleashed, even though he's always had that inside of him. Yeah. Right. And they push each other to that. And I think this movie, more than Dark Knight, really represents, because always this concept that Batman and the Joker are, the A side and the B side of that coin. Right. I heard a comic writer once say that they are two faces coin, the defaced side and the regular side with the two heads. That is Batman and Joker. I thought that was a real cool thing to say. But it's like the dichotomy between those characters is so different. Now we're here. Like, I think I talked about the reason why that trailer got released was the concern over Michael Keaton playing Batman, right? That really freaked people out. He's like 5'10", right? He doesn't look like the traditional Bruce Wayne. But 35 years later, I think for our generation specifically, I think he's still the favorite Batman.
Oh, he's mine. Yeah. I love his Bruce Wayne.
Yep.
Even more than I like his Batman. His Bruce Wayne is phenomenal. It's just in my eyes, that's Bruce Wayne. You know what I mean? He's aloof. He's millionaire, but you know what I mean? You don't know what's going on. No one really knows. I mean, I just think he's more so than even, I love Christian Bale's Bruce Wayne, but he's so different. You know what I mean?
Christian Bale played people always talk about, oh, Bruce Wayne's supposed to be this millionaire playboy, but that doesn't ever happen in comics. No one ever, you'll get little bits of it, but for the most part, Bruce Wayne and Batman are almost the same. It's more like what in the comics specifically, you get more like what Keaton is, or like what Bale is in Dark Knight, not so much like what he is in Batman Begins, which is an underrated movie. What I love about Keaton in this movie is everybody's concerned when they casted him, because again, all he did was these comedies beforehand where he's kind of this fast talking shyster all the time, like Mr. Mom or Gung Ho. Great movie.
Gung Ho, yeah, great.
Gung Ho's great movie. I don't know how well it holds up, because there might be some stereotypes in there, like maybe not age well. But I remember really enjoying that movie as a kid.
Was Multiplicity after? It was after.
Multiplicity is what he does instead of doing Batman Forever, and that was the story for the longest time as well. He turned down Batman Forever for Multiplicity, and then after Joel Schumacher died, he was like, "Nah, I turned down Batman Forever because it sucked." But no, he did. Dream Team is another one. He does a movie in '88 just after Beetlejuice called Clean and Sober, where he plays a
Oh,
recovering
I don't
drug
even know that
addict.
one.
This is the
Yeah.
movie that got him the part as Batman. Like that's the movie that sold him to like John Peters because it was him doing a dramatic performance.
Yeah.
And what I loved about him as Batman was how subtle he is, because we've seen Michael
Yeah.
Keaton chew on the scenery and like be the center of attention. And in this movie, as
Yeah.
Bruce Wayne, he's very soft spoken. You know, he's very reserved. Like he's very human until he isn't.
Yeah.
You know, like there's moments where he seems very, just like you said, aloof is a good point, a great way to say it. But there's times he's talking to Vicky Vale and he feels very human. And then you look back at him and you're like, this fucker's crazy. Like,
Yeah.
like he's sleeping upside down at one point, and then he does the thing.
Well, the
about,
dinner
like,
scene where they're eating
dinner
at that
scene,
big table.
that's
you know,
hilarious.
I mean,
That's one of
awesome.
those
Yeah.
human. That's a great
Yeah.
scene. That's like him feeling human, where he's like, I don't think I've ever been in this room. Like that's
Yeah.
one of the first times he feels like a normal person. And
Yeah.
like you really, I think that underrated is the chemistry between him and Kim Basinger. You talked about the apartment scene where they just look at each other and
Yeah.
they know what each other is thinking. Because
Yeah.
you have that, like, you know, you have that with certain people in your life. You just look at them and you can just you know the vibe that they're on. And they just, the two of them, you can sense that he's talking to her with his eyes and that she's responding. Like their chemistry is really off the charts. But I mean, that the dinner scene I really like, because like you really can just feel the two of them feeling each other out. But like he's so weird. Like he could have just told her, hey, I can't make it today, I got this thing to do. But instead he just straight up lies to her because he's feeling like, oh, because like, oh man, I'm going to talk more about them. Like the scene where, like the one as a kid, the scene that always bothered me the most, and it did for me for a long time, was when Alfred lets Vicky Vale into the Batcave. Right.
Well,
and they even made jokes.
Before that though, where she figures out when he's Batman is when and Elliot Cox is saying, "Hey, this is what happened in that alley, and his parents were murdered." And then he's like, "Man, what would that do to a kid? You know, that must make him really." And then she just kind of walks out. And then I think the next scene is probably her going into the Batcave. But that scene sets it up where
You're right.
Elliot Cox is kind of like, you know what I mean? And that's why I'm like, man,
Alexander Knox.
He's a
Alexander Knox.
Or Knox, yeah. Is it Knox or Elliot or
Cox?
Is it Elliot or
Cox?
Cox
that's the mayor. That's the mayor. Knox is the reporter.
Knox,
Wolf.
yeah. That's
Arliss.
Yeah.
That's Arliss.
Arliss.
So you know you're right, man. She's I never picked up on that, but I think you're right. I think she kind of figures it out there. What happened? Like I never thought about that before. Because again, she does such a great. She's so good in this movie. She does a lot of storytelling with her eyes. And just the way she plays off of things, like Kim Basinger is really underrated as an actress.
Yeah, she didn't overact at all. I mean, it was, she was fantastic. Much different than the Katie Holmes. Yeah, obviously they're different characters, but much different than that. You know, I almost just more subtle. She told a story without saying a lot. You know.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people in this movie are doing that, with the exception of Jack Nicholson. And I think that's what makes Nicholson stand out so much more, is he's very much in a Tim Burton movie, chewing on the scenery, and even the guy who's Batman is kind of laid back for a lot of the movie, which makes that scene you talked about, the apartment scene, work so well. Is when he goes, "You want to get nuts?" That's a very Michael Keaton scene, but we don't see that until that moment, and it makes it, you feel the tension in that.
Like, you know, he wanted that scene. You know what I mean?
Yes,
he's been so reserved. And then even the scene where it's Basinger and Knox, and they're walking through his room, and they're like, "Oh, this guy, and he's got this armory. He talks about this," and they're like, "Where the heck do you think where do you think this is from?" And he's like, "Japan." And he's just sitting there in the background. There, he's like, why? Because I bought it in Japan.
I bought it in Japan. You know? His delivery on that is so great.
I love that part, man.
It's so matter of fact.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. Him just feeling like a normal, like he's a millionaire, but he feels like a normal dude at parts where he's Bruce Wayne. It makes him very relatable for Batman, because Batman's like the least relatable superhero of all. Like he's the one who doesn't have any powers, but he's a millionaire. He's a billionaire bent on vengeance, right? Like there's no one less, like Superman is more relatable than Batman. Batman is impossible to relate to, but Michael Keaton plays it so well. And there's this there's a scene when he figures out that Jack, because I think he had started to put the pieces together beforehand, that Jack was the guy who killed his parent. The Joker's the guy who killed his parents, right? Because
Yeah.
he talks about that scene. I think that he might have a hunch, but it's not until he hears the dance of the devil in the pale moonlight line that he's like, okay, it's him.
And he goes, "What did you say?" He goes, "What?"
Yeah, that look on his face,
Yeah.
and just he puts it all together. So then
Yeah.
the flashback straight of Frank Miller, you get the pearls, it's so surreal. The crazy ass echoing effects that they do, beautiful scene.
Oh,
The
yeah.
very next scene is when the very next sequence is when Vicky Vale comes into the Batcave, and she has this I've never really appreciated it before, because I couldn't get over the fact that Alfred let her in, and I couldn't let
Yeah.
go of that as a nerd, right? So for this is the
Yeah.
first time I actually listened to the dialogue between the two of them. She's trying to figure out what the hell is wrong with this guy, that she's got this super fat, like I hate using the term in love because it's so corny, but it's like this mad and fat, they have this super infatuation between them, right? And
Yeah.
she's like into this guy, but she knows he's a fucking lunatic, and she's trying to like figure it out. And he's like, hey man, and he's like, a lot of times in later Batman movies, they always play him like flirting with the idea of giving up being Batman. Right.
Yeah.
Like maybe I just want to, like, in this movie, she's like, do you have to do this? She just doesn't have to be a perfect world. And he's like, fuck that. It's going to be a perfect world. I have to go kick someone's ass. Like, he's just like,
And then he's like, because no one else will do it, you know?
no one
Yeah,
else.
he's
Exactly.
like-
Because no one, exactly. No one. And he's like, and I got to go to work. And he's so
Yeah.
freaking,
Oh, I love that scene. I
He's-
love that scene.
it's so good. He just like said, I got to go to work. And it's just like,
Yeah.
no one else is going to do this. I have to do this. It's what I'm here to do. And there's no like doubt in him. And he kind of tells her, look, if you want to be with me, you got to be with Batman.
Yeah.
And
Where
she in the moment accepts that.
Bale had moments of like where he wasn't
Doubt.
sure, does he need to be doing this? I want to be with Rachel. If I'm going to be with her, do I gotta, give this all up? Where it was Keaton, there's no, I mean, he's Batman. You
He
know
is
what I
Batman.
mean?
Yeah, that's the line. I'm Batman, right?
Yeah.
And there's
First
no
scene.
doubt about it. Because I mean, like, and there's always talk, like there's three, like there's always Superman, like Superman and Batman are very similar. It's not just Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent and Batman and Superman. There's three of them, right? With Superman, it's always, you have Clark Kent, the reporter that he pretends to be. You have Superman, the outward presence of Superman, and then you have Kal-El, the real guy.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas with Batman, you get the two. You get Bruce Wayne and Batman, but then you get the moments where you get the real Bruce Wayne. And it's usually when he's kind of by himself in the cave and he's thinking. That's the guy. But that guy is Batman. Like, Bruce Wayne is Batman. There's no borders between them. Like, he'll play up Bruce Wayne, he'll play up Batman, but they're the same guy. Like, there is no separation between the two of them. And I think Keaton just does such a fantastic job of showing us a guy that's, like I said, out of his mind, but you can relate to him and you feel for him and you cheer for him.
Yeah. He's easy to cheer for, man. And
Really
then fast forwarding to seeing him in
Yeah.
the Flash, man. I mean, I know it's not, but that was just, you were like, man, you're gonna love this for something. And I didn't watch it until I think it came out on HBO or whatever, and I saw it and I was like, man, you're right, dude. This brought back everything. I remember I went and watched Batman right after. I'm like, God, I miss him, man. He's so good,
I just want them to give him one more, because the Flash movie, it's not horrible, but it's also not good, right?
No,
And
I know, but that part was
he's great.
Yeah.
He's great. Michael Keaton is not the problem.
Yeah. No, he's not.
It brought back tons of memories. Like, that really feels like what would have happened to that Batman when he got older, right? Like, that Batman, he did his job. He stopped crime in Gotham City, and it was like, now he's got like the Dark Knight Returns, like Unforgiven. He's got one more rodeo in him.
Mhm.
And the problem is the Flash kept showing up, and he just kept derailing the whole movie. If the movie was just like Batman Beyond or Batman Dark Knight Returns with Michael Keaton, it would have been so much better, because he steals every scene he's in. He's so good. And I love him so much.
Man.
So I love him so much. So this movie won one Oscar when it came out. Did you know that? Do you know what one Oscar it won?
I do, but I forgot. What was it?
Anton first won it for the art direction and the production design. So
Really?
like
That's it.
just that's it. That's it. Didn't win anything else. It was a super popular movie, and the Academy doesn't like treating the popular movies very well. But you couldn't deny, like, because when you look at this, this is a different kind of superhero movie. Like, then this is a different kind of movie they don't really make anymore.
Was Nicholson up for anything? He didn't even get
Nope.
he didn't even get nominated.
That was the
Wow.
talk, was that Jack would get nominated, but he did not get nominated for his
Wow.
role as the Joker because they just didn't respect it at the time. I
Yeah.
don't know if Heath Ledger gets even nominated if he lives, to be cool. I mean, maybe I'm just a negative person, but I mean, like,
I don't know.
they didn't do stuff like that. Remember,
That's
like,
true.
they just didn't nominate those kind of things. Like, remember when Return of the King wins the Oscar, people like lose their minds.
Well, they were not happy.
No, like, people were not thrilled about that. So I mean, like, I don't know. Like, Heath Ledger is excellent in that movie, but if he doesn't, if the legend that accompanies it, if that doesn't come with it, I don't know if it moves the Academy to do what's right, because the
Yeah.
Academy oftentimes ignores people. But anyways, the only one this movie wins is for art direction, and like now every superhero movie is in a city, and it feels very realistic. Like they're currently making new super. They're currently James Gunn Superman is shooting in Cleveland right now. You live in the town where the old Superman movie got shot. They shot right down the road from you, right?
Yeah. Plano or sandwich. Yeah.
So this movie, they don't do that. Gotham City is completely a work of art. Like nothing
is.
But nothing is real. Those are not city streets. It's all sets. It's all matte paintings. It's all like old school. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, this is so Tim Burton. That's very much like he just sketched this out and handed it off to a production designer. Guy's name was Anton First, and they created this like nightmarish island cityscape. Yeah, and it doesn't. It feels very. And this, I'm gonna get super film nerd here on you, Joe, and apologize for that. It's very much like German expressionism, like the cabinet. There's this movie called The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. It's this German horror film from the 1920s that like. The background, like it feels like a dream when you're watching it. Like I can't even begin to describe the plot, but like the trees look weird. It's very surrealistic and it's just odd. And if you watch, you can go, "Oh yeah, Tim Burton clearly loves this movie." Because I mean, all of his stuff has this weird aesthetic, and the villain looks pretty much like every character from a Tim Burton movie. Like, and so Batman, his Gotham City really feels like that. It doesn't feel like, there's times you look at it, it feels like a city, but like when you get like a bird's eye view of a Gotham City, it looks like
the buildings are so tall and it's so dark.
Yeah,
it seems like it's always raining or something. You know,
it's always raining. It's always raining.
Dirty. It's it's such a different look. Where you got Dark Knight, you see them. They're running around Chicago. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that's what they were going. That's what they were going for. Is Nolan wanted to do and I respect that. He wanted to do the opposite of what Burton did. Like Nolan couldn't make a Burton movie, so he didn't. So he made a Michael Mann movie instead. Like whereas Burton is very clearly doing the most commercial Tim Burton movie possible. And like the city, like in this, I was trying to pay attention to like the production design. The scene where Batman's driving through the woods with Vicky Vale. The trees look off. Like everything
doesn't even look real. The forest doesn't look real.
It doesn't look real. That's what I'm talking about. It's this, everything's expressionistic. It's like, it's not like, it's like a nightmare, a dream about what it could look like. And it works because like these other characters are playing this very real. Like they're not being weird. They're trying to play this as realistic as possible, with the exception of Joker, who's like on another freaking planet. And Batman is also on another planet, but he's like trying to act like he's on this one. It's really a movie about weird people in this it's so Tim Burton. But it works. Like it was really well cast. I mean, again, I've really been hard on this movie over the years because it's not realistic, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think sometimes
I don't think you could have made this realistic.
I agree,
though. You know, what I think it would. I think it would have been. I think it would have been a bad movie. I mean, it just wouldn't have been. I wouldn't have enjoyed it as much. Like if it would have had a backdrop like a Nolan flick or something like it. It wouldn't have. With the characters that they have, and how they were what they were trying to do, it just wouldn't have, I don't think it would have worked, you know.
No, I agree 100%. I think especially for a movie that bridges the gap between the Adam West super campy Batman and like even Superman. I love the Richard Donner Superman movie, but that thing's
Oh,
kind of campy. That thing's kind of campy in places, and the sequel's super campy. Like for
Oh,
this,
for sure.
it's not campy, but it's like it's surrealistic. Like it's so out there, but I think it had to be like that. Like
Yeah.
I think at some point I think comic fans specifically feel like people are always making fun of our hobbies. So like we want them to be as realistic and as true to life, as almost hyper realistic as possible, because
Yeah.
then we can show people, see, this isn't stupid, this is serious. You should take this stuff seriously, because it's like an inferiority complex thing. And now that
Yeah.
I'm kind of older and more comfortable in my skin, I can go back and look at this and feel like, yeah, you know what? This is a weird fucking movie, and that's what makes it great.
Yeah.
It
And
had
it's
to be.
okay.
It's
Yeah.
okay, and it's beautiful. Like you could like Heath Ledger's Joker doesn't work here,
Oh God, no.
just like Jack Nicholson's Joker doesn't work in the Nolan verse, right?
No way.
It
I mean, you
it
couldn't
had
do it, you know.
no, it had to be this, and like there's just I appreciate this movie. I've come full circle on this, man. When we were kids, I loved it. It was my favorite movie. I couldn't stop talking about it the year it came out. I saw it. It's the only movie I ever saw at the theater 3 times when I was a kid. I talked my
Yeah.
parents into going to it multiple times. We had a Betamax growing up. We didn't have a VHS. My parents were the last of the Beta because, you know, we're video snobs, and Beta looked better. That's the God's honest truth. Betamax
Yeah.
videotapes looked better than VHS. It was higher quality. You
Yeah.
know, when I was working in TV production in the mid-aughts, we were using Beta Cam, which was the cousin of Betamax. It was better. However, Batman was not being released on Beta. It was only being released on VHS. So I annoyed my parents until they bought our first VHS player. And the first purchase we made was Batman in
Yeah.
September of 1989. So like this is like I've totally come full circle on this. I've gone from like loving it to like, oh, it's good, to like being like, oh my God, I can't believe I used to love this movie, to the point where I'm like, dude, this movie's awesome. And anyone who thinks
It is.
differently is a snob, and like you don't get it. Like this movie is so much more like a comic book than people give it credit for.
I agree, man. I mean, it's fun too, you know.
It's
Especially
super
just rewatching. I was really happy that you you asked me to come on and do this, but then even that you said, hey, I rewatched it, and I'm like, I want to rewatch this too and see, what I think. And now I agree. A lot of the same feelings. I don't think I ever went as deep to say I never did not enjoy
No.
them. You know what I mean?
Dude,
Where
I
I always
mean, you're
thought,
not-
I'm like, it was always fun because I always liked Jack, and Michael Keaton's one of my favorite actors, and I think he's he's awesome in this,
One thing I respect about you and your love of movies is you've never been pretentious. Like you very unapologetically like what you like and don't give a shit about anything. And you and I have seen literally thousands of movies together,
Oh,
good,
God.
bad. Like we would go rent the worst movies we could, and you would like them, not even ironically. Like you would find things to like and love about god awful movies and not like feel bad about it or laugh or like, I like this movie because it's intentionally stupid. And like, I like it ironically.
Yeah.
Like, you just like it. And so like, part of me is because I was a film student. Like, I study
I
this
know.
shit and I read about it. So you get like at some point you get full of your own bullshit when it comes to these
Yeah.
things. So I think for a long time I've been full of myself when it comes to my opinions on movies and stuff like that. Whereas I
Growing up,
respect you.
man.
Yeah, it's part of growing up. I mean, like we're too old to be talking about growing up, but we're growing up. Like, and that's why I don't like we should do this at some point. Big Trouble in Little China was a movie I
Oh,
saw as a
man.
kid that I forgot about for a long time. And we were in college. You're like, you were raving about it. I'm like, all right, I haven't seen this movie in years. I'll watch Big Trouble in Little China. And your passion for that movie
Oh, I love
was
that
so
movie.
infectious that it made me love it to the point where it's my, like, if I'm feeling down to this
Yeah.
day, that's the movie I pop on to feel better about life. And that's just
Oh, it's a
from
great
your love of movies. Like you love, like you have this ability to find what's beautiful about a movie and talk about it and just love it for what it is and not worry about what it isn't. And I've always respected that. I don't know if I've ever said it to you in person, but now that we're sitting here having this conversation, I wanted to say that.
No, man, that's cool to hear. No, I agree. It's I find a lot of good in a lot of bad, I guess you could say.
Do
But hey, man, I think that's what's fun about it. I mean, we've seen so much shit out there.
Oh
I
my
mean,
God.
from Wishmaster to Battlefield Earth to, I mean,
we
go
paid
down the
to see
line.
those movies.
We paid to see those movies.
Like, we actually paid money to see it. So we were growing up, right? We had this theater down the street from us when we were growing up in high school. And they opened Sony theaters in Streamwood. When we first opened, it was a really nice theater, but very quickly it got run down, and like the people who ran it didn't give a shit. Like they wouldn't even have people taking tickets. Like there were a lot of times, like if there was like a rainy weekend or something like that, we would go to the movies on a Saturday and watch like 4 movies. Like we did that all the time and didn't pay for one of them. And they like knew we were there. Nobody cared. Like it's closed before. I think we were like 22 when it closed. It was open for like less than a decade. But I mean, like we saw hundreds of movies.
We spent a lot of time in that theater.
Not a lot of money, but a lot of time.
A lot of money, yeah.
So I mean, I had a great time.
We had the movie pass, man, without having the movie pass.
We actually had the movie pass before the movie pass was a thing. Someone called it theft, but we saw just a ton of movies. So I definitely want to do this again. The next, so we're here, right? Let's continue Batman. The Batman movies change very much after this, right?
Yeah.
It goes way in the Tim Burton direction. So the next time we get together, let's do Batman Returns.
Okay. Yeah.
What do you think?
All right, I love it, man.
I want to thank Mike Gilbert for allowing me the flexibility to do this. I hope you guys enjoy this. Let me know what you think of this new project. Perhaps this part is no longer the JD Leah project. This will be something a little bit different. But up till then, man, I want to thank you, Joe, for joining me today. I hope you guys like it. Tell me what you thought about the original Batman. Like, put it in the comments. Let me know. Tell me your opinions of what I think is a redefinable masterpiece. I've gone 360 on this thing. I've gone all the way from this is a genius film to this is stupid, but I like it, back to being this is a beautiful piece of art. I adore it.
Can't agree with you, brother. Thanks for having me on.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you, guys. And Mike and I will see you guys on Thursday. We're going to talk more wrestling, have some fun there. Thanks.